The city of Greyhaven wore ordinary like a well-pressed suit. Every morning, shutters opened to the sigh of kettles and the scrape of chairs, streets rinsed themselves in pale winter light, and the river moved with patient indifference under 3 old bridges. Teenagers swapped ghost stories at the edge of the football field, parents laughed them off, teachers rolled their eyes, and the legends drifted away like breath on glass. On paper, Greyhaven looked statistically normal: crime low, mortgages high, lawns even. But numbers do not measure the way a place remembers its dead. Beneath porch lights and cul-de-sacs lay a topography of whispers, a crying passenger who asked for rides and vanished near the old toll road, a hooked man who scratched car doors by the reservoir, a featureless watcher who stood by playgrounds at dusk. The legends were spoken with a smile and a shrug. People repeated them because it felt good to be scared in a safe place. They did not realize that stories are not safe when a town is hungry for a past it refuses to name. So Greyhaven went on, the way a clock goes on, tick, click, tick. Dogs barked at the same empty corners. Street lamps blinked twice on certain blocks for no electrical reason anyone could prove. And in the attic of the library, a limestone building with an honest, civic face, there was a drawer that never fully closed. The janitor blamed humidity. The children said a girl lived in there, waiting to be found. I didn't move to Greyhaven for its stories. I moved for a teaching job, the kind with chalk dust and budget meetings and the agreeable exhaustion you carry home like a heavy book. On my first night in the faculty housing, someone slipped a welcome note under my door. "Beware the toll road," it said on the inside, in tidy looping script. There was a smiley face drawn beside the words. I laughed, placed the note on the fridge, and forgot about it until the rain came. It was a Thursday, the kind that falls through the week like a loose stare. I stayed late grading essays and left the building to find the sky boiling over the river, rain churning the air into wet confetti. The wipers worked like metronomes, and I kept time with them, left right, trying not to think about anything but soup and sleep. Then my headlights found her. I took the left toward the toll booth's rusted ribs of a creature long dead, and that was when she began to cry. Not the messy sobs of the living, but the careful, contained weeping of someone trained not to make trouble. "Almost home," I said. She nodded without moving. She lifted her face once and the water did not run off, it hung there like a veil, refusing to fall. I slowed before I realized my foot had moved, as though the car pitted her and dragged me along. The booths appeared, blind windows under a canopy of dripping tin. Every lane showed a red X except the far right, which pulsed a dim, patient green. I chose it without choosing. Something scraped the roof, slow, deliberate, metallic. I told myself it was a branch because I needed it to be a branch. She whispered a name, I want right here. It belonged to someone who died on this road, the kind of death that leaves receipts. I checked the rear view. The back seat looked deeper than it should have been, like a well with its water painted black. The speedometer said 18 miles per hour. The world outside said stillness. The car insisted we were moving through a place that did not move. She lifted her face once and the water did not run off, it hung there like a veil, refusing to fall. The GPS rerouted twice toward the river and then gave up, asserting that I had arrived when the road was still dark in both directions. I said, "We're almost there." She said nothing at all, and her silence was heavy enough to steer. A sign on the right declared the toll road closed. Someone had drawn a smiley face over the word, in looping, tidy ink. She lifted her face once and the water did not run off, it hung there like a veil, refusing to fall. The car's digital clock blinked 3:33, then 3:34, then 3:12, as if time itself were practicing how to behave. She stood at the shoulder, a pale dress pasted to her legs, hair slicked across her face as if the rain were trying to erase her. I said, "We're almost there." She said nothing at all, and her silence was heavy enough to steer. A sign on the right declared the toll road closed. Someone had drawn a smiley face over the word, in looping, tidy ink. Water pooled at her feet. The scent of river silt and cold iron filled my lungs, clean and wrong at the same time. She opened the door without asking, and the cabin temperature fell as if someone had opened a freezer and left it ajar. Water pooled at her feet. The scent of river silt and cold iron filled my lungs, clean and wrong at the same time. I felt watched the way you feel watched by a painting, no footfalls, no breathing, just a certainty that has no proof. Her voice was threadbare and careful. She gave an address near the toll road, then folded her hands as if she were praying. The booths appeared, blind windows under a canopy of dripping tin. Every lane showed a red X except the far right, which pulsed a dim, patient green. I chose it without choosing. She lifted her face once and the water did not run off, it hung there like a veil, refusing to fall. I felt watched the way you feel watched by a painting, no footfalls, no breathing, just a certainty that has no proof. She opened the door without asking, and the cabin temperature fell as if someone had opened a freezer and left it ajar. A sign on the right declared the toll road closed. Someone had drawn a smiley face over the word, in looping, tidy ink. I kept stealing looks and lost courage each time I found only the curve of her cheek and the heavy, private line of her mouth. She opened the door without asking, and the cabin temperature fell as if someone had opened a freezer and left it ajar. At the base of the final booth, she put her palm on the dashboard. The radio died, the fan died, the lights died, and for an instant I felt the car become a coffin with windows. Then everything returned. The passenger seat was empty. The puddle of water remained, cupped in the upholstery like a bruise. I followed the address anyway because grief makes calculators of us. The house existed. A small blue square with a crooked mailbox and a porch that leaned like a tired man. An old woman opened the door before I knocked. "You brought her as far as you could," she said, and smiled the way people smile at wakes. She pressed a damp scarf into my hands and closed the door on my questions. After that night, Greyhaven rearranged itself. I began hearing the scrape at odd hours, on my windows, across the hood of my car, once along the blackboard as I wrote dates for the week. The students laughed then fell silent when the sound continued after my hand stopped moving. Someone told me not to park by the reservoir. I parked anyway, brave in the stupid way grief makes you brave. On my way back to the car, I found 4 clean gouges along the driver's door, evenly spaced, like fingers that ended in knives. There were reports of a featureless man near the elementary playground. The children gave him 3 different heights and 2 different coats but agreed on the missing pieces: no eyes, no mouth, no nose, as if someone had forgotten to finish him. A teacher named Carla phoned in sick and never came back. Her houseplants were watered. Her mail stacked itself by the door. A neighbor saw a tall, unfinished shadow standing in her kitchen at 3 a.m. and decided not to be involved. I told myself these were coincidences holding hands. I told myself fear is a bad cartographer. But the city mapped itself onto me. I started avoiding mirrors after midnight because my reflection lagged behind, as if it needed time to assemble. I kept hearing a breath that wasn't mine when I stood too close to glass. The night they came together, the river was high enough to lick the undersides of the bridges. Wind combed the trees into nervous shapes. I woke at 3:12 because of course it was 3:12 to the sound of footsteps in the hallway, precise as a metronome. I called out and heard nothing answer, and the nothing had teeth. In the front room, the window fogged from the outside in. Someone traced a single word in the mist, home. Below it, 5 lines dragged slowly across the glass, testing its softness. I stepped back. Behind me, the mirror on the coat rack caught me at an angle and then forgot my face, holding a blank oval where I should have been. The blank tilted, as if considering how to fit me on. The weeping began at the door, small and practiced. The hook scraped the doorknob, metal on metal, patient. The blank in the mirror leaned so near that my breath fogged the emptiness like paint. I said, "I want to look." I looked anyway. That is my failure and maybe my salvation. They were not separate hauntings. They were an ecosystem. A single appetite wearing several skins, fed by every retelling, every nervous share, every offhand joke. In Greyhaven, people repeated the legends because it felt safe to be scared together, and the thing learned to harvest safety itself. It took our cautionary tales and found in them a way to breed. I realized the stories used us as couriers. When I told my students not to drive the toll road, the class grew quiet in the bright way of new fear. When a parent posted warnings on the town forum, the thread bloomed with screenshots and timestamps. Each repetition fattened the dark like rain fattening a river. The more we tried to protect one another with words, the more doors we built for it. The house shook without moving. The walls inhaled. The lights dimmed to the color of old teeth. I felt the air thin, not colder but emptier, as if oxygen had been replaced with memory. The weeping, the scraping, the blankness, they braided into one sound, a low ecstatic hum beneath the human range of hearing. I spoke to it the way you speak to a storm, not expecting an answer, only hoping to survive the conversation. "I know what you are," I said. "You live in the telling." "Then let me tell you wrong." I opened my mouth and spoke a version of the legends that refused the appetite at their center. The hitchhiker reached her porch and went inside and locked the door and slept. The hook belonged to a fisherman who retired happy and let the lake keep its secrets. The faceless watcher took clay and made himself a gentle face and learned to smile. I told it again and again, until the room tasted like copper and the mirror's blank blurred like wet chalk. For a moment, the glass showed me whole. Then the word home on the window smeared into harmless weather. The hook scrape softened into the ordinary scratching of a jasmine vine. And the weeping broke into rain. You are reading this with the clean courage of daylight, maybe, or the practical light over a kitchen table. You think stories are scaffolding, useful but temporary. You think the night belongs to bulbs and locks and passwords. I want that to be true for you. I want it the way a drowning person wants the shore they can name but cannot reach. Listen, what I learned in Greyhaven is simple and unforgivable. The legends do not need your belief. They only need your attention. When you repeat them aloud or in the private theater of your head, you give them a mouth. When you warn a friend, you build a bridge. When you check the back seat just in case, just this once, you lay out a welcome mat you pretend is a barricade. So when you drive tonight and the rain arranges itself into a figure by the road, you will hesitate. You will think of her and you will think of yourself, and the story will open its little hands. When you pass the reservoir and hear a coin fine scrape along the door, you will tell yourself it is a branch because you need it to be a branch. When you stand before your mirror and feel your reflection catch up a heartbeat late, you will tell yourself you are tired. You will not be wrong. But you will have already told the story. And the story knows your route home. If you must speak of it, Speak it wrong. Speak it into gentleness until the dark gets bored and wanders somewhere else. And if that fails, turn on the light, not because light saves you, but because it reminds you what shape you are when the blankness leans close. Now close this, and listen. The house is quieter than you think. The window is fogging from the outside in. Someone is writing a single word, and if you read it aloud, it will learn the sound of your voice.